Hey everyone, before we get into the video, remember, if you're looking to play any of these agents at the top level, over at SkillCapped.com, we have a bunch of agent-specific courses that are made by actual Radiant one-tricks. These are top 500 players that literally have thousands of hours on one agent alone, sharing everything they've learned with you. This is by far the fastest way to build agent mastery in Valorant. So if you're really looking to improve fast, be sure to check out SkillCapped.com. Now, let's get into the video. With patch 4.07 likely to be one of the final updates this act, it's time to have our final recap of where the agents square up against each other. It's important to know what's going on in the meta so you can make accurate decisions of who you should be picking in your games. It only makes sense that some agents are stronger than others, so be sure you're making an informed decision before you put your rating on the line. For example, you'd hate to find that you accidentally queued into a ranked game as Phoenix. He's currently the worst agent in the game by pretty much all metrics. With a 40% win rate in Radiant lobbies, you may find yourself confused if you're a lower ranked player. But when Phoenix ults, I always die. While his ultimate is a great entry tool, it doesn't really do anything different than any player running in. A jet dash or raised satchel can take space in ways no other agent is capable of. Anyone can run onto site like a Phoenix ult. Granted, they don't have that extra life, but it's still physically the same thing. This is why Phoenix doesn't see a lot of play. But the duelist role has become so easy to place power levels, so I won't waste any more of your time. Jet's still god tier, Raze and Reyna are still pretty good, and Phoenix and Yoru are still pretty low. Neon is actually our pick for this week in terms of hidden power though. She currently has one of the highest win rates in the game in Radiant lobbies, so that's pretty neat. Also, if you take a look at any of the matches from Optic recently, you'll notice they're running quite a bit of Neon, and making good use out of not only her movement speed, but also her wall, which is an ability that has been clowned on quite a bit since her release. She's definitely not the weak agent that many people may seem to think she is, and I definitely keep your eye on her as the meta continues to evolve. She especially makes great use of agents like Kayo, who are excellent at gathering info quickly or throwing a flash for us to entry. Speaking of Kayo, he has officially made it to the S tier. His place in the meta is just so necessary right now, and as players are starting to adapt to his playstyle, he's starting to see dominant play in both the pro scene and matchmaking. His stats in ranked aren't anything crazy, but when you look at pro play, it's easy to see what's going on. 25% pick rate in pro play is on the lower end for our S tier, but Kayo serves a very important place in the meta right now. With both Chamber and Jet being excellent and necessary agents for a team in most situations nowadays, Kayo is pretty essential for removing these trade negation abilities, as well as both of their ultimates. On top of that, he's also excellent versus agents like Viper for just ruining their whole setup for stalling pushes. Abilities in Valorant have just been getting stronger and stronger, and every time that happens, Kayo becomes that much more useful. He justifies his place on the S tier, along with Sova as usual. As for the other initiators, Skye and Breach, they both find their places on other maps. All of the initiators are in a great place right now. Unfortunately, there are only two of them that do something no other agent does. Maybe the new initiator, when we see them, is going to spice up the meta a bit, but I've already heard from some pro players that they don't believe it will affect the game much. The question is always going to be, is this agent worth replacing Kayo or Sova for? And the answer is almost always going to be no. Although it is definitely too soon to say. Maybe this agent ends up being one of the most overpowered agents we've seen in a while. That being said, I'd like to remind everyone that nearly every agent release thus far took a little bit for people to really start getting value out of. Kayo wasn't great on release. It took people time to find its value. Same thing with Neon, Astra, and Chamber. For the most part, the immediate reaction to agents releases has been, oh, this agent is pretty weak, quickly turning into, oh, this agent is incredibly strong. So, who knows? All I'm saying is remember a time when people were clowning on Chamber for having a sheriff for an ability? But now that we've realized his place in the meta, there's no way we're ever going back. Aside from Jet, nobody is as good of an opper as Chamber. Some agents like Reyna and Yoru can maybe dismiss quickly, but the king and queen of opping will always be Chamber and Jet. And because of this, Chamber has kind of ruined the Sentinel role in Valorant. Chamber does something no other Sentinel can do, which is not only op effectively, but also take the burden off of his Jet to let her roam free. Whenever a Jet picks up an operator, it's oftentimes a hindrance for her team. You don't really want one of the best entry agents in the game sitting in the back line. It doesn't really make sense. But suddenly when Chamber was introduced to the game, you have options that you just didn't have before. Now Chamber can op, or Jet can op, or both of them can. Because of Chamber, the meta of the game has completely changed. Chamber is by far a must-pick agent right now, and I highly recommend picking him up if you haven't already. Along with that, Killjoy, Cypher, and Sage aren't terrible. They're acceptable, but they just don't bring to a team what Chamber does. I don't know how this issue is ever going to be fixed, to be entirely honest. What is relieving is that because Chamber is a viable op agent, at least in pro play, you're seeing more team comps that don't run Jet. This means at the very least it opens up more doors to spice up the meta on the duelist side. Only time will really tell. We'll keep you posted on how things evolve in the coming months though. And that brings us to our final role. For controllers, Viper is still holding her place in S tier. The previous nerfs didn't absolutely gut the agent, they mostly just inconvenienced her. She's still a must-pick on maps like Breeze and Icebox, while also being played on most other maps. Weirdly enough though, along with Viper, Omen made his way up to the A tier. He sort of sneaks up on you like that. Omen's ease of use makes him such an easy pickup. He provides a ton of convenience in his kit, pretty much always having a smoke available, or a GTFO button with his 3 teleports. Along with that, he's always had the strongest blind in the game, so this isn't too much of a surprise. Especially in the recent VCT series, you've been seeing quite a bit more Omen. One thing that's quite wacky about the agent changes is that you're starting to see a lot more Flex Ninja type Omen plays, where the player will play rather aggressive with their teleports. It seems reducing the channel time on Omen's Shrouded Step actually did a great job of making the agent more aggressive. Before, it wasn't too much of an option to go for these crazy TP plays, but now because it's possible, you're seeing professional players, notably players like Marv, take advantage of this. That playmaking potential is something highly undervalued on the controller role. Sometimes it's not enough to just drop smokes for your teammates. Sometimes you really need to be the one to go in and get your hands dirty. As for our other 2 controllers, they're both in quite an interesting spot. Brimstone is a bit weaker than we initially thought he was, and Astra is a bit stronger than we initially expected her to be. Brimstone, Stim Beacon, although now useful, doesn't quite put him above Omen or Viper in all situations, which quite frankly is how it should be. Not every agent needs to be viable on every single map. You'll notice that Brimstone sees quite a bit of play now on Bind and Fracture, while he hands off the reins to Viper on Icebox and Breeze, and generally Omen on Split, Ascent, and Haven. Astra still squeaks her way into the meta at times, depending on what team you're watching, but this is a stark change compared to the previous meta, where Astra was the only viable controller. You'll see on the tier list all of these agents' places relative to each other. Other than that, those are our agents for this end of Act tier list. Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.
How much have you ranked up since using SkillCapped?
That would be 5 times now.
I placed Iron 1 on my first act.
And what rank are you now?
Gold 1.
So I jumped from Silver 2 up to Plat 1 within 2-3x maybe.
What's your favorite part of the website?
I absolutely love the Smurf commentaries.
Agent courses and the game sense ones.
I think the agent guides.
What was your favorite agent guide?
I think the Jet one. I think it went more in depth on everything.
Is there anything that SkillCapped helped you learn that you think would have taken longer otherwise?
I think my whole aiming situation.
Like how to use the agent abilities, like the util. Before this, I was just throwing random shit. Let's say Sova, I was just drone random areas.
I didn't know about the audio cue when it comes to reload switching. Like if you hit reload and then quickly pull out your knife and switch back to your gun, the enemies will get the full audio cue, but you have your gun out.
You've come from, what was your original rank?
Bronze 1.
Bronze 1, and you're already up to Immortal, so that's really freaking cool.
Yeah.